Aloha, inspired moneymakers. Before we start, I just want to say that in these turbulent times of war and loss of civilian lives, we're very fortunate to be safely at home and to have the luxury of talking about the inspired home, designing your life with intention. We can never take that for granted. I pray for those who have lost their homes, their loved ones, and their lives. Overall, I pray for peace and the end of conflict. Welcome to episode 9. I'm your host, Andy Wong, financial advisor at Runnymede Capital Management. Today, we're diving into a topic that touches every aspect of our lives, our homes. But we're not just talking about bricks and mortar. We're exploring the very essence of what makes a home truly inspiring. We're going to embark on a transformative journey to discover how our living spaces can not only reflect our values, but also amplify them, our well-being, and our commitment to the planet. We're going to delve into the art of intentional living, where every corner of your home can become a sanctuary for your soul. We'll tackle clutter, not just in our closets, but in our minds, to make room for what truly matters. We'll explore how the design and layout of our homes can be a catalyst for mental wellness. And yes, we're going to talk about the earth, because sustainability isn't just a buzzword, it's a responsibility we all share. So whether you're looking to declutter your life, elevate your mental well-being, or make eco-conscious choices, this episode is your blueprint. We've got expert voices and inspiring choices to help you design a life of intention where you live. Let's bring in our panelists. I want to introduce Leo Babauta. He was not happy where he was in 2005. Overweight, in debt, a smoker, and a procrastinator. He changed his habits in a big way. He quit smoking. He ran a marathon. He wrote about his experiences on his amazing blog, Zen Habits, established in 2007, offering wisdom on simplifying life, practicing mindfulness, and embracing minimalism. Welcome, Leo.
Thanks for having me.
Excited to have you. We have Katie Cassidy in the house, who's not an architect, but she does play one on TV. Katie is a third-generation Hollywood actor known for her roles in the popular TV series like Supernatural and Arrow. Her portrayal of Laurel Lance, Black Canary in Arrow, earned her widespread acclaim. If you do not know, we're about to find out that she's absolutely into home design, crystals, and other things. Welcome back to Inspired Money, Katie.
Thank you so much for having me.
Excited to have you. We have Matthias Olt, an award-winning architect celebrated for his innovative and eco-conscious designs. Through his architecture firm, he integrates modern aesthetics with sustainability, emphasizing energy-efficient technologies, eco-friendly materials, and a seamless connection with nature. Welcome, Matthias.
Thank you for having me.
And then we have Mark Ainley, who I just started contacting or communicating with last night. He's been dedicated to the practice of contemporary Feng Shui for over 2 decades, helping people achieve life integration through modern interpretation of ancient principles. He's taught and consulted in Japan and in the USA. Mark, super excited to have you.
Very pleased to be here.
So with this dream team, I look forward to learning a lot. Hopefully all of us can learn from one another. Let's jump straight into segment 1.
Welcome to a new way of living, intentional living. Imagine a home that doesn't just look good, but feels good. A sanctuary that aligns with your values and nourishes your soul. That's the essence of holistic home design. Holistic design isn't about isolating rooms. It's about interconnected spaces that flow seamlessly. Think of window placements that maximize natural light, or furniture arrangements that encourage conversation. It's about balance, flow, and the overall wellness of those who inhabit the space. But what about the planet? Sustainability is the third pillar. Eco-friendly materials, energy-efficient appliances, and even indoor plants can make your home a haven for you and a friend to the environment. The magic happens when intentional living, holistic design, and sustainability come together. It's not just a home, it's a lifestyle choice, a conscious decision to live in harmony with yourself and the world around you. So are you ready to transform your living space into a holistic haven? The choice is yours.
Leo, you've embraced simplicity and minimalism. As you transformed your life, how was that reflected in your family's home?
Well, it had to start with me, as you said. I had to look at what I was bringing into the house, the space that I could control. So instead of me trying to get rid of all my family stuff, so we have a big family of 6 kids. It's a Brady Bunch mixed family, but big family. And so instead of me taking all their toys or trying to toss my wife's stuff into the trash, it was really about me me looking at what I was what I could control, what I was owning and what I was bringing in. And as I started doing that, what it was is a model for everybody else in my life. And so they started to see me making these changes and what was really positive about it. I started sharing that with them and started radiating it outward. My wife now is probably more of a minimalist than I am, which is really cool. My kids are not. So they have their spaces where they get to do whatever they want. But in common spaces, we make agreements around how we want to share that space. So
that's cool. So it doesn't have to be all or nothing.
Yeah, for sure. I think there needs to be a lot of agency if you're in a family. And so letting them own their stuff is a big part of it. But it's also how do we want to live as a family? What are our values? And what actually makes us happier versus feel really cluttered?
Matthias, what are your thoughts on transforming a living space? Why is it so important?
Well, it really relates back to our origin. See, in architecture, the term we use for this is biophilic design. Now, biophilia is our innate affinity to all things living. And many of these affinities work at a subconscious level, meaning they affect our physiology and our psyche at a molecular level without our intention. I prepared a few visuals, if I could have the slides, please. And I can support a little bit what I'm talking about. So biophilia means the love of living systems, and it can dramatically improve the way we feel and also how we perform in our everyday life. Here's an example for biophilia. It's a 17-story residential project in Texas that's made of wood. It's a very special type of wood that's referred to as mass timber. And for this type of undertaking, science discovered that genetic links exist that show how our biological responses, how they are encoded in our makeup and trigger positive reactions in our physiology and our psychology. So all this happens without intention, but just by how our body responds. And speaking of how our body responds, did you know that touching wood for 90 seconds lowers the release of stress hormones in your brain, in your body? There's scientific research around this. In a 2019 study, participants performed written tests in furniture settings with white surfaces, plastic surfaces, and wooden surfaces. And what they learned is that over the exposure of a minute and a half or so, the stress levels on wooden surfaces was reduced. The cortisol release in your brain was reduced by 38%, by 40%. So now, if taking tests on wooden surfaces can help you control your mood and your motivation and your stress and your fear, then maybe there is something more about it. And similarly, this is the heart rate over those 75, 90 minutes. and of this test taking, and it demonstrates in blue that a wooden surface will lower your beats per minute by 5 to 10. And if you extrapolate this over a lifespan, a person's lifespan, then you can imagine the positive impact of those materials in the world. Similarly, research shows that the presence of water prompts greater improvement of self-esteem and mood, and activities conducted in green environments or those with access to views of nature will improve our performance. This is a project here in my region, a project we designed in the Seattle region. A very different scale of a project, but again, the use of water here in Lotte Center, Hanoi, a project we designed in Vietnam. Again, the inclusion of water as a means to reduce your stress levels and improve your overall performance. The science behind biophilic design explains how this works. There is a psychology professor called Dr. Vatanian in Toronto, and he studies several complex cognitive functions such as empathy, emotion, impulse control, and decision-making. And he found that the sight of curvilinear shapes activate an emotional region in your brain that determines what is beautiful. So spaces without your doing are judged as beautiful when they echo nature's curved lines. And this here is an example of the use neutral tower, one of our design concepts. In this project here, lastly, then the core of your question is the sanctuary of well-being. What is the sanctuary? And it's the places that we as humans seek that include nature in fundamental ways. And this project here, the high-rise project, has interior sky gardens. It is something that we experimented in with our project Lotte Center Hanoi here in Vietnam, where the entire building, residential and hotel and offices, are organized with a central stack of sky gardens that travel top to bottom and produce these really sacred spaces of retreat and of pause. Thank you.
That's incredible. I
Yeah.
obviously need more wood in my life.
Yeah, I need to go hug some trees. But it also is interesting what you said about water, because I do have a water fountain at my entrance, which also I think will segue into Feng Shui. And I know a little bit about, but I definitely want to hear more.
Yeah, Mark, tell us about the elements, because I know the elements are so important to the Chinese, and why in Feng Shui is placement so important?
I mean, I'll speak primarily to the elements here because Matthias did a beautiful job on educating us on how physiologically, mentally, emotionally, on all of these levels, our environment is communicating to us beyond our conscious comprehension. And when you incorporate the elements of nature, and this is, I'm absolutely loving all of the science. I've been really delving into environmental psychology and biophilic design as well. And to know that the science is supporting this is really important. So the fact, I mean, I love this wood table story. And, you know, we also need water. The Chinese have 5 elements in their system. So it's water, wood, water nourishes wood, wood fuels fire. So you need fire. Every room needs a splash of red. Then earth, and then metal. And so there's this whole creative cycle that goes with those. And when they all relate to emotions, they relate to personality functions. And when your environment incorporates all of these elements, we feel at ease because our bodies come from nature. And we're living in environments with straight lines, which in nature are read as a threat. And so again, this information, I've been on a soapbox for 20 plus years about curves and the need for curves and the fact that, you know, when we're living It's convenient to have a flat table and a flat wall to hang your art and so on. But when you incorporate curves, you put a plant in a corner, you have some curves in the furniture, all of a sudden your nervous system can calm down. And so it's the same thing for the elements. And there's certain things we do in Feng Shui, like red, especially on the horizon, the far side of a wall. It symbolizes the sun on the horizon, and it draws you into the space. So there's all of these subconscious techniques where we basically take what's happening in nature and we bring it into the built environment, and it just resonates. And just like you don't need to know necessarily how the engine of your car works in order to know how to drive, when interior design is done well and these ingredients are all there, you'll just walk into a space and you'll feel at home.
Katie, do the characters that you play ever influence your home design?
That's a really interesting question. Yes, absolutely. They influence, when I embody a character, it influences everything around me, especially while I'm shooting. But having a space and a home, it's my sanctuary, and where, as everyone, I go back to. And when I'm shooting, I don't always, sometimes I shoot in different locations. And so I'm put into a hotel, and I am definitely, this is so funny, someone who I will go into a hotel room, and the first thing I do is I rearrange the furniture. And I'm sorry to say that, but I do. I like to feel like, everything is in flow, and there's intention with every space. And especially within my home, and you guys had mentioned decluttering. I had met someone probably 15 years ago, and I'm not exactly sure what her job title was, but she said to me, you really should go through your stuff and declutter and take out what doesn't serve you. Because she said, think about it. If you have all this stuff and all this clutter, and this stuff is just there, living there, not being used, it's just sort of just taking up space. But if you actually donate it, to charity, or, if it doesn't serve you and it isn't bringing purpose, get rid of it. And that way that's allowing new space for new things to come into your life. And I think that was it really stuck with me. And I spent so much time just decluttering so much just stuff that I've accumulated over the years. And it's almost like I could breathe again. And another thing, with your brain, and I have a tendency to do this, is I won't write stuff down. I'll just use my brain as a filing cabinet, which that's not what it's supposed to be used for. So instead of having all this information, which I appreciate, in my brain, if I actually just take it, write stuff down, make notes, it's then not living in here taking up space. I can see it, I can have a checklist, check it off. And even the act of that is so fulfilling. And again, I'm like, oh, good, I can breathe. So yeah. We can't hear you.
You're muted.
You're muted, Andy.
I think that I'm the king of clutter. So with that, we will move to segment 2.
Welcome to a transformative journey toward a purposeful life through minimalism. Imagine a life free from clutter, both physical and mental. That's what minimalism offers. It's not just about having less, it's about making room for what truly matters. Start by decluttering, a simple yet powerful act. Remove the obvious trash, and then focus on a small area like a drawer. Sort items into 3 piles: keep, donate, and toss. From what you keep, find a designated place. Time management is key. Allocate a few minutes each day and use a timer to stay focused. Challenges? Take the 14-day declutter challenge to transform your life in just 2 weeks. Remember, minimalism is a tool for finding freedom and focusing on your health, happiness, and what's truly important. Make the choice today to live a more purposeful life.
So Leo, I don't know if you ever took a challenge. What did your process look like?
So when I started, it wasn't so much a challenge, but it was a process of just layer after layer, starting to remove all of the clutter. And it was from my house to like the stuff I had on my computer to, like, as Katie was saying, the stuff in my head. So one layer at a time, I started to look at all of this stuff. But I really recommend challenges. So the 14-day challenge, I think, is a great idea, because what happens is when people are like, I really want to declutter my house, but like, look at, like, that video was a great example of it. This woman just like having piles of clothes, and it can get really overwhelming. And so when it's overwhelming like that, it can really help to have a challenge that helps you to like really focus and go through a process. And so even if you just did like 10 to 20 minutes a day, which is very doable, just like a little chunk that you can do each day, and have a challenge where you're sharing and holding some accountability and sharing it with other people, you can actually make a big change in 14 days. My first 14 days of decluttering were huge. And so it's a lifelong process, is really taking stock of what you have and being conscious of your clutter and just like what's in your life. But a 14-day challenge can really be a big start.
You're open about periodically falling off the wagon.
Oh, all the time.
What's that?
Yeah. So it's just like, it's taking your eye off the ball, like for a little while, that's not my focus, and I'm really in the creative mode. So I'm like just creating all the time. And because my mind is focused on something else, I'll clutter will build up. And one example of that for me is like, I'm not thinking about minimalism for a while, maybe for like 6 months to a year. And then, but I get really obsessed with something. So like I'm super into a certain topic, and I'll order like a stack of books on that topic, which I probably am never going to read, but just like something in my mind really wants all those books. Or like one time I got into ultralight backpacking, and I started ordering all this expensive ultralight gear. Like it's all like more expensive than usual backpacking. Yeah. And then my garage got filled with it. And I'm like, holy crap, what did I just do? So it's just kind of like, you're not always aware of the stuff coming into your life and like the tendencies of your mind. And one of the things I really love about minimalism is it starts to bring awareness to our mind's tendency. Like if I have this stack of books or a bunch of stuff on backpacking, like my mind's tendency is to like deal with the uncertainty of this topic by buying a bunch of books. That brings more awareness going forward, so that I don't always like repeat that. But yeah, no, I'm constantly like reassessing. This past June, I took a month off, and I'm like, what am I going to do this month? And I said, I'm going to go super minimalist and be really like Spartan about my stuff. And I just went through and I like gave a bunch of stuff away. I just saw like all the stuff that had been accumulating over the last during the pandemic, basically. And it was really nice. It was freeing to get rid of all of that. So I actually really like that process of coming back to it and then freeing myself of this, taking stock.
Facebook Marketplace has become like my best friend, because I can either sell something and get it out of my house, or I can just give it away, and someone will come to my door and happily take it away, and they're happy and I'm happy.
That's great. That's awesome. Make someone happy, get rid of your stuff. That's a win-win, right?
Yes. And then when I tell my wife, I'm like, I actually sold that for $20, and she's just in shock. She's like, well, that's a bonus. She's like, getting it out of the house is a win. Getting $20 is even better.
She's like, cha-ching. Great. What else do you want to sell, honey?
Exactly. Well, she gave me a whole stack of kids' winter coats this morning. She's like, see if you can list these on Facebook Marketplace or give them away. Katie, have you had a hard time like keeping it up? Like that woman told you should declutter.
Yeah.
Do you go through phases?
Absolutely. I love what he was just mentioning about it's almost like it's just human nature. Like I don't know if it's subconscious or what it is, but yes, of course, at times things start to pile up, and I don't even realize I just went on Amazon and ordered all these books or ordered all whatever it may be. But Leo, I have a tendency to have this sort of, I have obsessions over things for a certain amount of time. And anyways, I appreciate the process of getting back into it, of having the aha moment of like, oh, right, I just got all of this. Now I have all this junk or stuff, all this stuff that I need to now purge and get rid of. But it did get really bad. More recently, I'd say probably, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, it got so bad to where I had a storage unit of stuff and I was paying for it. And I did the math, and the amount of money I spent on this stuff just to keep it was insane. And so I went to the storage unit. I saw the amount of stuff that had accumulated. It was so overwhelming to the point where I just turned around and said, just donate. I can't even go through this. Like, I'd rather just donate this, and someone can appreciate and have the space, and it will these things will have a place, rather than it's just sitting there and I'm just writing a check to, I think it's called Clutter.com. Sorry to say that. And it was freeing again. And it was like, oh, right. And I can breathe. And I even moved to another, I went from a 3,000 square foot house into a condo that's just over 2,000 square feet. And my condo, I mean, I live at the beach, so water, yes. I also I'm lucky enough to also have a view of the mountains, and my space, it's not as big. So I had to get rid of a lot of stuff. And I've never been happier. So I definitely think all of this, it all plays a part in our well-being and how we feel about ourselves and what we put out and project out into the world.
Mark, how does Feng Shui relate to minimalism?
I think there's a common thread about conscious relationship. And so with minimalism, I mean, one of the benefits is when there's less, you can have a clearer relationship with things because you see them, it's organized, but you know what you have. And I wouldn't say that I'm a minimalist per se, but what Feng Shui can bring to the conversation is that emphasis of being mindful of the impact of everything that's in your space, so that and also its condition. Because, the way that I translate it, when there's clutter, I mean, we match energetically. I was talking about the 5 elements, right? If some of the elements are missing, you'll either match what's missing or you'll fill in the blanks and overemphasize what's missing. If you have a stack of stuff that's not being used or that's not in the right place, you feel that you're not being well used in your life and you feel out of place. And, really, it's interesting that we use these words like possessions and belongings. And if you think about that, like when you possess something, it sounds very transactional, right? And when it's a belonging, it actually belongs in your home. And what everybody, I think, on the planet is looking for is belonging, not fitting in, which involves actually compromising your state of being in a way that's not truthful. So, the real emphasis is, if everything in your home actually belongs there because it reflects who you are, it's of importance, it's being used, it has its place that's logical and ideally with some aesthetics, then that's something that I believe creates some flow just symbiotically because of how it is that we are always in this dynamic relationship with our surroundings. So again, it's not, it's a lot easier to keep track of stuff if you're more minimal. I consider myself more of a conscious maximalist. So, I have quite a bit of stuff, but I know where it is. And even if I'm sort of, color blocking my books, I actually know, this one's that color and I go for it. That's actually a technique which can seem really superficial to sort of arrange your books by color. But what it does is you can actually see each block as one item instead of seeing all the individual books. So there's a level on which your brain is seeing less clutter, because it's not seeing all of these different things all at once in one section. So, the whole red section actually can read as one thing simultaneous with all of the individual books. So there's all of these techniques that you can use, but the main thing is you want to be conscious of what you have. And when it's unconscious or when it's like not being used, it's not in the right place, that's going to have reverberations in your life. So Katie, good on you for that whole big release job. I mean, it's so freeing, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Matthias, how can architecture support a minimalist lifestyle?
Well, architects, as you might know, love to talk about this, so I'll try to keep it really short. So from an architectural point of view, there's, the process of decluttering promotes an efficient use of space. And at a more abstract level, one thought is that it's a very purpose-driven process if I declutter or if I organize. The purpose behind it is that if I remove items from my life that no longer serve me, I make space for items that do. And that is something fundamentally important to understand, that yes, I can have all those things around me, but they distract me and they confuse me, and they really do not help my focus on things that really matter in life. I would like to just last thought on this. I would like to propose or introduce the concept of inversion thinking, which kind of goes the direction, which is, instead of thinking what makes you happier, think of what would make you miserable and avoid it at all cost. So the concept of identifying the things we shouldn't do is often easier for us, and the concept of identifying things around us that are in the way of things is easiest. And if we can start there, it might give us focus on things that really do matter in life and our decision making.
That's a great tip. After this show, I will address the pile of papers at my feet and throw them all out.
Oh, thank goodness. Pile of papers. I just got overwhelmed thinking about that.
Isn't that amazing, though? Because, I mean, literally the thought of it can actually induce the stress. It's not even like just the physical state of it. Like, and we all have these relationships. We've all got that experience. And so this is where, having that clear relationship. And I love that concept of inversion thinking, because that's really, that's another, just as soon as you release, something in your environment that, it's not serving a purpose, you might actually have some aversion to, like, Aunt Gladys's tea set I keep referring to in my talks, like, you didn't like Aunt Gladys, you don't like the tea set, why are you keeping it? It's actually sending you messages that say you're willing to put up with stuff that you don't like for somebody else, and that's in your personal space. Like, we have to make compromises in the outside world to get along with people, but in your personal space, you should really have a say. And what Leo said, of course, is right on, that you take personal responsibility, and there's this whole concept of shared space, so you don't get this sort of overlord sort of mentality of necessarily, although there's places where with 6 kids you will, but but when everybody learns that level of self-responsibility and shared space, and you give yourself that, and release what it is that no longer serves, you definitely, as everybody's been saying, you open up your physical space and also your mental and emotional space for what it is that is in alignment in present time.
I have a question for you, Mark. So after saying that about Aunt Gladys's tea set, I don't know, I feel as though anything like, I feel Aunt Gladys's tea set holds Aunt Gladys's energy. And do you believe that the things hold on to energy, I guess is my question. And what if that, Aunt Gladys's tea set, and obviously if we didn't like Aunt Gladys, why are we holding on to the tea set? Because we're told, society tells us we shouldn't. It's
disrespecting if you get rid of it. It's challenging, and it's always compromise. Yes, I do believe things hold energy, and I think for a lot of people that'll sound woo-woo, but to bring it down to just the conscious level of awareness, if you are consciously aware that you don't like it, and that you didn't like her, then that's part of the energy that's being held. So, that level of relationship is really part of it. I think there is that which is sight unseen. And, so people will do smudging and so on. It's not like the biggest part of my practice at all. I really work on just that, let's make conscious choices. Let's, that's that with that minimalist mindset, or the consciousalist mindset, or whatever we want to call it. of making the conscious choice of why you have something in your space.
I have something to add to that, if I might. So I don't know if objects hold energy, like Aunt Gladys's energy, for example. But I do believe that they trigger an energy in us, that the experience of Aunt Gladys is within us. And so when we see her tea set, something comes up in us, and maybe it's like aversion, right? So this tea set triggers something in us. It's like these bad memories and this bad energy. Yeah. And so the thing I really love about minimalism is that it actually has us confront those energies. So if we have something that we're really holding on to, it could be, instead of Aunt Gladys, maybe it's my grandfather's vase, right? So I'm looking at his vase and I'm like, if I get rid of this, like I'm getting rid of him and the memories that I have for him, the love that I have for him. And I love that minimalism has us confront that, because actually it's not, I don't believe it's actually in that vase. Maybe it is, I don't know for sure. But my grandfather's energy is in me. And so when I see that object, I feel the love for him. The memories and all of that are all here. What I realize is that I can let go of the object and that energy is still here. Like I still have an incredible love for him. And I might like have his picture show up on my phone so that energy gets triggered in another way. But I don't need the actual object to have that memory or love.
Totally agree. And it doesn't mean that we should then just get rid of things. Like if you really like something, again, there can be that positive emotion having the thing, sure. And then you don't need that thing also. Like if it broke, if something happened, then that your grandfather's energy is still in you. So it's not having this just be either or, right. But really having the whole spectrum and the whole field, and then just making a choice.
Let's move on to segment 3.
Your home is more than just walls and a roof. It's a sanctuary that shapes your mental well-being. Rooted in environmental psychology, the psychology of space explores how design, color, and layout influence your mood. Biophilic Design, which brings nature indoors with plants and natural light, can uplift your spirits. On the flip side, clutter can weigh you down, causing stress and anxiety. Ever wonder why you feel calm in a blue room? That's color psychology at work. Blues and greens soothe, while reds and oranges energize. Lighting plays a role too. Natural light boosts mood and productivity, and even artificial bright light can ease depression and anxiety. The layout of your home also matters. Open spaces encourage social interaction, while cozy corners offer privacy and security. Remember, your environment mirrors your emotional state. A harmonious home not only serves your functional needs, but also elevates your mental well-being. So take a moment to assess your space. It might just be the key to unlocking a happier, healthier you.
Matthias, did you have additional slides to share on the subject of
on the topic? Yes, we agreed that I would have something, and if I could have the slide deck, please, I can walk you through some thoughts that are around the idea of our mental well-being and how we relate to the world surrounding us. So research of environmental psychology consistently suggests that buildings and the spaces we inhabit support us best when they echo the scale and the tone of the natural world, through inspiring form, through light, through dimension. Philosophies, as you know, world cultures are rooted in this. And the concept of biophilia, although still fairly new in the West, is not a new concept. It's 2,500 years old. Eastern philosophies that cherished healing potential for nature-inspired design. For example, in Buddhism, we embrace the concept of impermanence as a philosophy and in design. Life is ever-changing, and its fleeting moments, they are captured in architecture. This is a residential project of ours where impermanence can be on the left-hand side through the quality of light, the quality of natural light at any given moment in time. It can be about the time, but it can also be about the spaces we design on the right-hand side. So the idea that a space for momentary relief is a good thing if I have the luxury to ascertain in that momentum. What we do practically along the lines of impermanence, this is a physical model for a housing project, a townhouse project. What we do practically is really look for ways that can promote flexibility that captures impermanence. So this is a working model, and what we do in this model building process here is, for this specific project, in the upper left-hand corner, removable or movable walls that you can see in the floor plan excerpt in the lower right-hand corner, where there's sliders that can enclose, open, enclose to the outdoors, or provide a moment of retreat within the spaces. When Katie earlier said, when she comes to a hotel room, the first thing she does is reorganize the space. That's the kind of ability we are looking for when we design homes. The ability that the users can rearrange and can reorganize, and that things are not necessarily fixed. And what these images here of the same project, what they document is just, the relevance, the importance of access to the outdoors, access to fresh air, access to daylight, access to natural plants. All of those, as we learned earlier, affect our health, our well-being, reduce our stress. And these are the important moments in the world that I'm living in the design world, as we ascertain how to create harmony, how to create balance. In Taoism, as you know, nothing is forced. Everything grows from within and is in a perpetual state of flow. And sometimes growing from within is about recognizing that vernacular. And this is an example here of our work in Southeast Asia. Lotte Center, Hanoi, where the curvilinear tower form is a cultural reference of the Ao Sai, the Vietnamese long dress on the left-hand side. So again, environmental psychology suggests that buildings support us best when they echo the scale and the tone of the natural world through inspiring form, light, and dimension. Thank you.
Thank you for the visuals. Leo, I love the idea of confronting one's relationships with things versus kind of just, packing things away, putting it into the garage, putting it into a storeroom, and not having to deal with those feelings. You can just repress things. I think oftentimes we find that that's easier. Do you find that over time, is it like a muscle? Is it a skill that you've just become better at over time?
Yeah, I actually think this is why clutter builds up, why we have hoarders, and this is just a putting off of dealing with something, which is an emotion that feels a little bit overwhelming. So that stack of papers that we talked about earlier, it's this, it feels overwhelming to deal with that. And so we push it off, and then we have another stack that builds up, and we push that off. And the same thing with our clothes, and everything else starts to pile up because they all contain stress or overwhelm or some kind of aversion. And so we have a tendency, and we create these habitual mindset around not dealing with stuff. And this is not just with clutter. This is with messages and emails, with tasks and chores and everything in our lives.
Oh, don't look in my inbox.
It just becomes like a way to shrink away from life. And so the great thing about this kind of thing is that you can actually start to change that and consciously choose to practice with something that overwhelms you, one little step at a time. Deal with those things that you haven't been wanting to deal with, like that stack of medical bills, and you're just like, I don't have the money for all of that. Or a bunch of tasks where you have to get back to people, and you just don't know what to do with all of that. And so it's as we work with this, we actually increase our capacity to be with stress and overwhelm with calmness and love. And it takes a little while, but it's a training. And I actually think that's one of the most powerful things about minimalism. Not that everyone has to practice it, but that it actually has us turn towards something and practice with it. And eventually, like, it doesn't have to hold us back. We'll find the next level of our edge where we're getting confronted. I think it's an incredible training.
Katie, you mentioned you love crystals. Like, how do crystals in your home add to your well-being?
Well, the thing I love about crystals is they come from the earth. They're actual live beings and they're eternal. Different crystals have different elements, and if you blend the two with that and feng shui, all of this actually, and feng shui, and again, I'm not an expert. Mark would know more about that, but you can use them. They're beautiful to look at as well, but having different colors with different elements and placing them in the right space, I think would really, I think it adds to your environment. They're also very healing and calming. Depends on what crystal you're, identifying with or at what time. I think it's all relative. But I wanted to touch on, first of all, Leo, thank you. I appreciate you saying all this because it made me just realize not only, so my physical world, I definitely have gone through and continuously always go through decluttering and minimalizing, but my desktop and my inbox and unsubscribing to, I think the other day I spent an hour and a half unsubscribing because I will have 175 emails in the morning when I wake up, and I'm like, it's really just, and I have to like shuffle through of what's junk, what's not, and having that little red number on my inbox causes me so much anxiety because it'll say, I think now, hold on, let's look. Oh, maybe I can't right now. The other day, I think it said like 15,000 and something emails that had not been read. And that in itself is like, oh my gosh, do I just delete 15,000 emails or do I go through 15,000 emails? At the beginning of the pandemic, when we were in lockdown, at the time, I believe I got to like 72,000. And I realized, well, I have the time right now. And I did actually go through a decluttering process and unsubscribing process. And having this all come full circle, I need to do that again.
Nice.
Yes.
Okay, turn off the red button. I mean, the red number.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, talk about, grabbing one's attention. Or
We're going to move to segment 4 while I hold on to a piece of wood.
In a world grappling with climate change, sustainable living isn't just a trend, it's a necessity. Imagine a home that not only comforts you, but also respects the earth. That's the essence of energy-efficient design. Smart insulation, cutting-edge appliances, and renewable energy systems like solar panels. But it doesn't just stop at construction. Eco-friendly renovation breathes new life into existing spaces using sustainable materials. The mantra is simple: reduce, reuse, recycle. From decor to architecture, every choice you make can either strain or sustain the environment. Advances in technology are making it easier to be green. Solar tech is more efficient, and smart home systems let you control energy usage with a tap on your phone. Yes, the upfront costs can be daunting, but consider it an investment in a greener future. Plus, there are grants and tax incentives to ease the burden. So whether you're building a new or giving your home a green makeover, remember, sustainability starts at home. Make choices today that future generations will thank you for.
Mark, to what extent does feng shui incorporate sustainability?
I think where it's probably like something that Matthias works in more than I do in terms of creating the physical structure that supports that. But Feng Shui philosophically works on that with, I think, incorporating, again, those elements that I was talking about, creating a combination of functionality and aesthetics. So, you know, one of the things I think it relates to clutter, but this relates to just overall purposing. You know, if you have to struggle even before you get out the door to find your keys, find your phone, find your wallet, oh, my phone didn't charge, all of these things where you don't have the system, where something's not sustainable. I mean, that's a level of sustainable living where you know where to find your keys, you know where to find things, you know, you have routines. And this relates to the minimalism as well, where, you know, things don't build up because you've got a routine of how you take care of things regularly, like you take the garbage out, and similarly, you go through your clothes, you go through your books. Benjamin Franklin had in his daily schedule a 30-minute period at the end of every day where he returned things to their places. You know, like living in the physical world takes time, it takes energy, and there's processes that are involved. And a lot of that would just get taken care of in nature. So when we have that in the home, and if you have, you know, composting, you have, you know, energy efficiency, I mean, it just makes so much sense. That's how nature was designed to function. So I'm just thrilled that right now we have this technology that, you know, architects like Matthias are bringing into structures, so that then the structures actually support that whole concept of natural living. I think it's brilliant.
Matthias, tell us about some of the innovative, sustainable materials or technologies that can make our homes more eco-friendly.
So, as just introduced, it's the concept of reducing my usage, our usage of energy, waste, water, and materials. Making sure that we eliminate the generation of unrecyclable waste. And that's a tall order because we are in an energy transition. The world is in an energy transition, and we're trying to figure out how to do less with more, and how to reduce, and how to generate electricity in a different way than burning fossil fuels. And at a high level architectural side, yes, they are passive. They're called passive energy saving strategies that I can employ as a designer. They have to do with orientation of windows in a home, making sure that they capture the winter sun and that they shade from the summer sun. This is not new technology or wisdom. That is, this is Socrates, Greek philosopher, 2,500 years ago or so. There are passive ways of ensuring that my energy needs in my home are minimized. There are active ways we just heard about, such as solar PV or wind energy or geothermal heat pumps that recuperate heat naturally from the earth, which acts as an energy sink. There is the strategy that was also mentioned of ensuring on the energy side that my building has a super insulation on it, that it is thermally insulated from heat and cold, that it is airtight, that the air that goes out, or the wastewater, so if you think about your warm shower water, that the warm shower water, for example, can be recouped in heat, so that you through what's called an energy wheel, you take back the energy that would otherwise be lost when you expel air, or when you expel your warm shower water. There are strategies around that. An important aspect is materiality, so the concept of waste mitigation in conjunction with the materials we use in a building, and that has to do with the circular economy, which is a buzzword for saying the materials I'm using to build my buildings ideally would be recycled materials. And there's a whole school originating out of Europe currently that ascertains how buildings can be designed in a way that they can be assembled and disassembled, taken apart, and reused again. There are urban harvesters, which is what they're called in Norway, for example, whose job it is really to document the deconstruction of buildings and the repurposing of recyclable building materials. Lastly, under that umbrella, there's the aspect of using building materials that are renewable. And it was mentioned earlier, the one and only renewable building material that we know is wood. It's bamboo and wood. And those two materials we can use to build buildings. And the idea there is that I can, store carbon in the building materials I'm using. Wood stores carbon. And that I, relatively to concrete or steel, really reduce my what is called embodied energy, so the energy that goes into making a thing. I can reduce that because I don't have to rely on high energy needed for steel or high energy needed for cement production. But I can use materials that are cyclical, that are part of our carbon cycle, the natural carbon cycle, and I can use them in building design. And it's not only sustainable, but it's also promoting health benefits, as mentioned earlier, and an overall more connectiveness to all things nature. I leave it there. Thank you.
Leo, any Zen habits from a family of 8 that can really help to make an impact?
On the environment?
Yeah.
We did some research around this. Like, I'm not an expert at all, but we did some research and looked at like what are the biggest impacts that we make on the environment based on what actually uses a lot of energy and carbon and all of that. And so we actually made some conscious changes, and we said, like, we want to live a life where we don't have to be perfect at everything, but what are some simple things that we can do? So my wife and I changed to becoming vegan. Some of our kids are vegetarian. That was the biggest one. That was one of the biggest ones. We drive an electric car. And then there's just, the energy that we're using at home is the other big one. And then how much we bring into our lives in terms of ordering stuff online. And so it's just, those were the few things that we decided we wanted to focus on. And they were simple, easy changes to make. And so we don't have to be perfect, and every single thing that we do is like perfectly good for the environment, but as long as we're doing the big things and making it easy for ourselves. So for me, if you asked about Zen habits, it would be like, what are the simple, easy habits that we can change that actually make a big difference?
One that my wife is big on is whenever we go out to eat, she brings our own takeout containers, because we always collect those takeout containers if we order. And then she's like, we might as well reuse these plastic containers. And they make really nice ones now that can be reused. And we kind of have a good laugh when we show up at the restaurant. The restaurant owners tend to be very appreciative, because they're really? Like, oh, you're saving me money. Thank you.
That's really cool.
And some restaurants, they know us. We even order takeout, and then we'll bring our own containers, and they will place our order into our own containers for us. So with that, we're going to go to segment 5 and bring it home.
In our fast-paced world, carving out a sanctuary for mindfulness at home is not a luxury. It's a necessity. Imagine a space where every element, from the color of the walls to the texture of the rug, invites you to pause and breathe. This is the essence of a mindful home. It's not just about meditation cushions or scented candles. It's about creating an environment that aligns with your inner self. The key is intentionality. Choose calming colors and soft lighting to set the mood. Opt for minimalism to declutter, and not just your space, but also your mind. And don't forget sustainability. Eco-friendly choices are mindful choices. Whether it's a meditation corner or an art studio, make it functional. Design it in a way that serves its purpose and enhances your well-being. Incorporate nature to bring tranquility, and keep it a tech-free zone to minimize distractions. Remember, a mindful space is more than a physical location. It's a state of being. It's where self-care meets self-awareness, allowing you to be fully present in the now.
Katie, I want to ask you, how do you create a sanctuary in your home? You talked about moving furniture in the hotel room, but like, what is your thinking about creating a safe, comfortable place for you?
I think it's all tied together. I am a person who I find myself saying, but also gravitating toward, I often say, I need space, or I want space, or I need, and I think that that's part of my, your home, it is your sanctuary, or at least for me, and I hope for everyone else. And a place you do have a say over how you want it to feel. And I think it's important to also have time to go into a space and have a space in your home, an allotted space to where you don't have distractions. There isn't technology around. And I also wanted to ask everyone on this panel what their thoughts are about wires, because we have so many. They drive me crazy. I have so many wires, but I'm aware of it, and I've been able to declutter the wire system. But and it all goes back to, I'm looking outside. I live at the beach, and I'm lucky enough, and I have plants and trees around, and the ocean. And then there's the electrical poles and the electric wiring and telephone poles, and it's just wondering if anyone knows when the world is going to do something about that. But yeah, I do think it's really important to have time for yourself and to go within, but also in order to do that, you need to have the tranquility and the space to do so, to be the best version of yourself that you can be. I hope that answered your question. Did I?
Anybody on the wires?
Yeah, I can definitely speak to wires. One of the things in nature is everything just operates as it does, and we don't see all of the processes. Things are really organic. And the things with wires and cables, the way I read that symbolically from a Feng Shui perspective, is it reflects to how am I powering things up, and when they get messy, when they get in your way, when they're sort of an eyesore, I find that people are really focusing on how am I powering up the things in my life. What are the procedures? How am I going about this? And how am I communicating around that? Because, it's communicating power from one spot to another. And so communication dynamics often get really highlighted. So that's some of how Feng Shui, I think, symbolically references that. And when it's not visible, I mean, if it's a bird's nest and it's not visible, it's still having an impact. But, when those are taken care of, you're basically going through this conscious effort to, like with minimalism, have a conscious relationship with how you power things up and how it is that you interact with that. And, when you go into first-class environments, first-class restaurants and hotels and so on, one of the hallmarks is you don't see the wires and cables. Mm-hmm. They have worked that into the design, and that's one of the reasons why there's that atmosphere, that cohesiveness. And so, on this topic of a mindful space and self-care and conscious living, taking care of those details so you don't have out of the corner of your eye this intrusion of something that you'd rather not be looking at, it then enables you to focus on the bigger picture and the things that you actually do want to be focusing on. So that's my take on wires.
I have one selfish question, hoping to get some wisdom from Leo, who has 6 children. Do you have any electronic free zones in your house? How do you manage smartphones and devices with the kids and you and your wife?
No, I don't think we have any electronic free zones. I don't manage any of their stuff. We each are responsible for our own things, and so for me, it's just a matter of trying to model mindfulness with devices. It's not that we don't use devices; every single person here does in our house. But are we on our phones and distracted while we're talking with each other? Are we like feeling anxious about, social media usage and all of that kind of stuff. And so we have discussions about this. And we just try and like bring just a level of mindfulness to that usage rather than like banning it and thinking of it as something bad.
Thank you. I just want to close with a home is deeply personal. And if each of the panelists could just share, if you could create anything, like what would a mindful space in your home look like to you?
I'm just going to jump in. Bringing the outside in more outside indoors, nature, wood, plants. I have, a few, but Matthias has this giant, beautiful plant behind him. I'm like, I need to go invest in those. And then I guess to touch on shungite is EMF blocker, which I guess given the electronics and the technology in the world that we live in, I think having shungite and having, the space and the crystals, but not too many. You want to not overwhelm yourself with too much stuff and have it be a clean, pure space that has natural light.
How about you, Mark?
All of that. So definitely, I mean, the nature inside, I mean, that's kind of my key philosophy. But really, the combination of nature, functionality, and aesthetics. So, you can bring nature in, you can bring in plants, but, what's the aesthetic around that, right? And so how are things functional? You don't have so many plants that, you can't sort of leave the room because you're in the middle of a jungle. So, just that combination of elements. And I think also really what I want to speak to is color, because, and to go back to environmental psychology, when we're in nature, color is a sign of abundance. It means there's an abundant array of plants and vegetables and fruits that we can eat. So it speaks to nourishment. And when things get too Spartan, we feel more like we're in the desert without the water and without the food, the fruits and vegetables and so on. So for me, color is really one of the key components to incorporate so that, again, our nervous system feels more relaxed. We know that we're provided for. So.
How about you, Matthias?
Just briefly, it would be a space where I could hear the water, where I could see the wind through the leaves of the tree, the moving leaves of the tree, where I would find the tranquility at times and the opportunity to engage in other times. And it would be probably a very much reduced space. That is an ideal space. But that is not the question that I think you are after, or the response that you're after. I think it goes back to what Katie initially said. It's the little things in life we can do to find our inner peace for more depth, for a more purpose-driven kind of everyday, by making just a few adjustments in the home that we inhabit and the spaces we inhabit, that have to do with moving in a plant or opening the window for fresh air or reducing glare through direct sunlight with an exterior shade, or introducing wood into the built environment for the obvious reasons that were mentioned earlier. Those are the little things that we can do now and that don't cost a lot of money and that are highly effective. I could go on. I have more images to share. I spare you of those images, but maybe lastly, want to just mention that something we haven't, or something that is equally important also, is the inclusion of art and music into our spaces. And by art, I mean the display of art on walls or the sculpture in the bedroom. And by music, I don't mean the blasting or the blurring radio in the background. I mean intentional moments in a day or in a person's life. It doesn't cost much, but it brings you into other spheres, and it's just an opportunity to rejuvenate. Thank you.
Leo?
Something I've been really finding really important in my life is finding ways to elevate a space or a moment into the sacred. And I think one of the things I've noticed in people that I work with is that we kind of go about our days as if they're just routine, and we're just like doing what we need to do, and we take everything for granted, and everything kind of just feels mundane. And that just leads, like, it feels like a life of like dullness, and every day is the same, and it really drains us. And so what I've been practicing for myself, and I really advocate for it, is how do we elevate the mundane into the sacred? And that could be just an intentional use of a space, from plants to light, everything that everyone's mentioned. Crystals is a beautiful thing. I like to have little things around that remind me. They're not necessary things. I don't like actually need this thing in my life, but if it's like a little statue of the Buddha, for example, or a crystal, or something that reminds me that I'm alive in a moment of a miracle, that there's just like something like just incredible about this particular moment. It opens me to like awe and wonder. And so that's what I would advocate for.
That is beautiful. I think at my house, we did do some home renovation. And one of the big things was taking down a wall in the kitchen so we have an open space. And I think it just works much better for our family. And we have 3 kids. And it just makes it easier for us just to be together. And, everyone could be doing something different. Somebody could be cooking. Somebody could be at the kitchen table doing homework. There's a computer nearby. Someone could be taking an online Chinese class. I think one of my kids is doing that right now. And then the music part comes in, because my avocation is playing acoustic guitar. I play Hawaiian music. So I need like a space for music, whether that's just to be by myself or to do it with family or friends. So I just want to thank all our panelists for sharing their time. This has been a dream team that has come together to talk about home design and living with intention. Please follow and support our panelists. You can find Leo Babauta at zenhabits.net. Check out the Zen Habits podcast with Leo Babauta, which is fairly new, but doing great already, and will continue, I'm sure. With each episode, it's going to be climbing higher and higher. So check that out. Katie Cassidy, thank you very much for joining. You can find her on Instagram. Look up Katie Cassidy. Katie, you have like 2.8 million followers.
I know. I'm grateful.
And you have some really cool projects, which you cannot talk about right now, but everybody should be keeping an eye out for you in the near future.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Matthias, his client list is like a who's who. I saw Alaska Airlines, Amazon, Boeing, Google, Microsoft. You can find him at matthiasolt.com. That's MATTHIAOLT.com. And
there's an S missing, but people will find me. Thank you.
Oh yeah, there's an S missing.
Matthias.
Sorry about that. Thank you for the correction.
All good.
And Mark is doing workshops, presentations, courses, and consultations. You can find him at senseofspace.com. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks for having me. Dream team.
I've learned a ton from the Dream Team. Thank you so much. Thank you to all the inspired moneymakers out there who are watching and listening. Please mark your calendars for next week. And do I have that in front of me? Kind of, sort of. I think that's the 18th, and we're going to be talking about wealth and legacy. So Wednesday, same time, 6 p.m. Eastern, and hope that you'll join us then. Until then, please do something that scares you, because that's where the magic happens.